Well, here we are once again for yet another unboxing, and today we have the Tymco Rally Synchro 4. Now this is a 1/8 scale 4-wheel drive brushless buggy, and I guess this one's aimed a little bit more at the budget conscious or beginner entry level type of hobbyist out there. This is only capable of running up to 4S, however it is still capable of speeds up to about 80 kilometers an hour, which I think is going to be plenty for a lot of people out there, especially if you're just sort of dipping your toes into the 1/8 scale buggy realm. If you haven't had this type of vehicle before, this might be a good way to do it without outlaying big dollars for the 6S cars. Although there are some compromises with these cars, we go through it and you'll see what I'm talking about. Tymco Rally has still beefed up a lot of these components, and I think have made the car strike a good balance between what you pay versus what you get, whilst not being too weak or compromising on quality per se. But this is just based on what I'm seeing. I haven't driven the car, so I don't know exactly, but it still has a lot of cool features. It is still splash proof. You still get metal diffs, and they are oil filled. You still get steel drive shafts. You get oversized plastic chassis braces going throughout. And of course it is available in 4 different colors. You've got the red, there's an orange, a blue, and of course a green as well. That box made one hell of a noise when it fell down. Oh my goodness. Okay, so the green one is the one that I've got, and I've got a bit of a green theme going on at the channel at the moment, so just makes sense for me to get a green one. The radio you get is this one. We'll talk about this guy in a little bit when we go through some of the other features, but for now we're just going to focus on this little bag here that you get. You also get in the bag a little lanyard, which I think is kind of cool. Tymco Rally have been including these lanyards now in a lot of their later cars, so it's nice to see that that's included. This does have a little loop at the back there, so you can hook that up if you want to, or use it for something else. The instruction manual for the radio is actually pretty good. I had a bit of a quick flick through because I wanted to familiarize myself with the radio, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail later on as well. You have an antenna tube, which I doubt is going to fit in the cars. Most of these don't tend to fit, and I'm probably not even going to use it, to be honest with you. And then of course you also have 2 other manuals in here. There is one for the car and one for the ESC, and if we have a look here at the settings, so the BEC is set to 6 volts. Now this is a slightly different servo that comes in this car. It's only a 20 kilo servo, which is still plenty, but I'm yet to see if this can actually run at 7.4 volts. I'm not 100% sure yet, so I may leave it at 6 volts for now, but if I find out that it can run 7.4, I may change the BEC settings to 7.4 on this guy. But you can adjust all sorts of things there, punch setting and so forth, reverse force, the usual stuff that you want to adjust on an ESC. The car manual is actually pretty good as per standard by Tymco Rally. They've actually been doing pretty good work on the manuals. All the instructions to work on the car is there, part numbers, exploded views, and of course you got an entire parts list at the back with the pictures of the parts and part numbers and all that sort of stuff included as well. So overall pretty well equipped, but as you can see there's no tools included in the kit, no batteries, no chargers, and they did not include the key ring that you normally get with the 6S cars as well. So moving on to the radio, this is a brand new radio from Tymco Rally. At least it's the first time that I've seen it come with a ready-to-run car. This is the CT2S, unless it's 2.5, but I'm pretty sure that's a 2S there. And it is a very compact and very small radio. Although I have to say, the trigger and wheel actually feel really nice. The wheel especially has some really nice springs on it. The trigger is well weighted and positioned really nice. And overall, when you're holding it and controlling, it actually feels natural. It feels pretty good. My only sort of criticism in the design of the radio is probably the handle. I kind of wish it was a little bit longer, only by a few millimeters, and that it had a little bit of a base so that you could actually stand the radio up, because as it is, it just will not stand up. You need to lean it forward or lay it down flat. Just be mindful of that. It does run on 4 AA's. They run inside the handle. There's a little door here that you open up. I'm not going to do it because it's kind of tricky to open, but you put your batteries in there and away you go. So the weight of it is not very bottom heavy, it's not very top heavy. It's well balanced because the batteries are right in the center, and I think that works quite well for this radio. And as I said, the wheel and trigger actually feel really, really good. It's got the little loop for the lanyard here, as I mentioned earlier. And then on top, you'll notice that this is actually very basic, right? There's not a lot going on here. You've got your on and off switch just down the bottom. You got the steering trim here, steering dual rates over here. You get an LED indicator light. Solid light means that the battery is full and you've got, full charge on the batteries for the radio. Blinking light means that the batteries are starting to go flat, so it's time to change these guys over. You got a function button over here, which is a multi-function button, and we'll talk a little bit more about this a bit later on. And you've got this little slider switch up here, which does a couple of different functions. Now, there's a little sticker here that kind of shows a few different things, but I suppose the most important one is you've got 100% there and 50% down here. This is the top speed of the vehicle. So if you slide it all the way up, you are using the full power of the vehicle, and if you slide it down, you're running it at 50% power. Now, the function button will actually work with this switch to reverse your channels. So if you look here, you'll see there's a 1 and a 2. So this is now selected into channel 1, right? If you press and hold the function button, the LED will blink after a few seconds, and that means that you've now reversed the channel 1. You flick this up to channel 2, which is 100% of your power, but we won't worry about that for now. You just switch it up to channel 2, press and hold the function button, the LED will blink again, and now you reversed the throttle. So 1 to turn, 2 to burn. So channel 1 is your steering, channel 2 is your throttle. And yeah, you probably don't want to reverse your throttle, because then when you pull the trigger, the car's going to go backwards. You push the trigger, it's going to go forwards. So probably not ideal to do that. But yeah, if you swap out a servo or something, that one there and the function button will come in pretty handy. Now, there is no bind button on this. That is because if you press and hold the function button whilst the radio is off and then turn it on, this will the LED light will come on blinking. That means that this is now in bind mode, and all you got to do, according to the manual, is just turn the car on and it will automatically rebind back to the receiver. So you can always do that if you want, but then of course just remember, when you rebind, you also need to recalibrate your ESC, so just follow the instructions for that. Overall, I have to say this is a really well-equipped radio for what it is. Given that this is on a budget car, it does quite a fair bit, and it is pretty easy to use despite it not having a bunch of different switches and buttons on here. It's actually very simple to use. It fits pretty well in the hand, but as I said, probably my only criticism, and it's really because I've got pretty big hands, I kind of wish the handle was probably just slightly bigger, but this is something that I can get used to quite easily. The important thing is the trigger feels really good, and so does the wheel. So as long as I don't have any range issues or glitches or anything like that, this is actually going to be a really good radio to use with this car. So good on Timco Rally for bringing this one out. And now for the main event, the Timco Rally Syncro 4. This is actually a really nice looking buggy. I like how Timco Rally have finished this off. I think they've done a lot of good things here. Given that they had to sort of do a little bit of a compromise on the car because it is only a 4S car, they're trying to keep the prices down. I think they've actually done a few good things here, and we're going to be talking about a few of these components as we go through this. As always, starting from the outside and working our way in, we have our wheels and tires. Wheels look absolutely fantastic. I like them. Tires, well, I have to say, these look very much like a particular tire from another brand, competing brand, may I add. And they actually don't feel too bad. They've got really chunky tread. I don't know if it comes through on camera, but it's very tall, very motocrossy. These should last quite a long time, I would think. It does have a little bit more of a harder compound than what you'd find on the identical competition tire. So these are slightly firmer, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because they're going to last you a lot longer. And let's face it, this is only a 4S car, not a 6S car. So there's a good chance that you're probably not going to have too many issues with ballooning or anything like that, and you're not going to be wearing them out all that much. So these should last quite a long time. Suspension wise, wow, I have to say this actually feels pretty good. Feels pretty well dampened, pretty well sprung. I don't see too many issues with the suspension on this as far as the feel goes. but I guess we'll find out exactly, you know, how it works in the real world when we take it out for a drive. Shocks, they are a plastic body shock, but they are threaded, and they do have little alloy caps on the shock. So you can see there, they got these little alloy caps. Now it's those, the whole cap is not alloy, it's just the sleeve. It's like a big thick thread that goes on, and there's a plastic little ear that comes out and that bolts onto the shock. So the cap itself, it's not all alloy, but at least the ring here is alloy, because on the box, if you have a closer look, for those with the keen eye, you would have seen that those shocks did not have the alloy caps. So these alloy little caps on here have been an addition afterwards at some point. So at some point somebody said, no, we're not going to do them in plastic, we're going to do them in aluminium. And yeah, I think that's a good decision. I'm going to give you a little bit more durability there for sure. We have some pretty beefy A-arms on here. Now these A-arms I think might be the same as what you'd find on the 6S cars. I'm pretty sure these would be very similar to those. There is no sway bars installed, but you can see here that they do have provisions for sway bars, so you can mount those up. They do have droop screws already pre-installed, so that's cool. You can adjust the droop on this quite easily. Big beefy plastic shock tower. Have a look. This shock tower, like this whole thing kind of tapers in, and it's just super thick and chunky. I think these shock towers are actually going to do really, really well. Looking forward to see the durability of this, you know, long term, to see how they go. Drive shafts don't look too bad. They look to be about 4mm thick or so. And they are universal at the front here. Not universal, they're CVDs at the front. And I think you have standard dog bones in the rear. I'm pretty sure of that. Let me see if that is in fact, yep, standard dog bones in the rear. You've also got sway bar provisions on the back here. You do have what looks to be a little bit of an alloy mount at the back. Now this is not the full shock tower, this is just this little bit here. And then the shock tower is plastic in the back as well. And you can see that the rear shocks also have those little aluminium caps, which is quite nice. Moving on to the body, we take this guy off here real quick. And you know, it's pretty much a standard body. There's not much to write home about here. There's no plastic skids or anything like that. It does have the little hole there for the antenna. The body itself, I mean, I like the body designs that Tymco Rally are coming out with. I don't have too many issues with that. But again, I kind of wish they had a little bit of protective tape on the inside, just so you know, to stop the paint from rubbing off. That's probably the only thing I wish they had on there. And then of course we move on to the guts of the motor, or of the chassis right here. So we have those beefy chassis braces that I was talking about. These are super chunky right here. Also the rear looks really nice and beefy as well. These actually look, I'm going to be honest, they look better than some of the 8 scale buggies that I've reviewed in the past. So I think Tymco Rally have actually done this really, really well. I'm pretty impressed with this. The way that they've done these mounts. I mean, look at the chunkiness of this thing. Very, very nice. You got your body post there. Looks really, really good. This motor is a Torox 2150 kV. I think this would be like a 65mm can by maybe 36 or 40. I'll put it up on screen if I find the specs, because I couldn't see the specs on the box for this. You've got your ESC over here, which is of course 135 amp. It does come with XT90 connector. Not connectors, because this is only a 4S car, so they're sort of anticipating you put a single 4S battery in here. Of course, you can run this on 3S as well. There's nothing stopping you from running it on 3S or even 2S, because this is a 2 to 4S ESC. So if you want to maybe give this to one of your little kids or somebody to have a go for the first time, you can you know, put just a 2S in here. It'll be nice and slow and easy to control. And then of course step up to a 3S or a 4S or what have you, and you know, use the radio speed settings to kind of yeah, change the speed on that and get used to the car. It does have a little cap pack over here as well. You've got a center differential going through. Now I believe that you can get the optional tower to tower brace that you see on the what was the one, the Spark that I unboxed recently, which is actually sitting over there, yet to be run. So that brace can actually be fitted in here, I think. I think it's the same brace, unless there's a different part number, but I'm pretty sure they've got provisions here. So if you do want to beef this up a little bit, you can do that. You do have your 20 kilogram steering servo just here, and then of course you have the alloy servo horn just there. Steering links and this link over here, as well as the camber links at the back, they are all fixed, which is pretty standard for a lot of the Timco Rally cars nowadays. They did used to come adjustable, but I think for the general public to just bash around and have a bit of a good time with these cars, you don't really need to have those to be, you don't need to be adjustable. If you do decide that you want to play around with it, well then obviously you can buy the optional parts and make them adjustable if you so wish. You do have only 2 battery straps with this car. Again, hopefully in the future Timco Rally might actually introduce the 3rd one, or perhaps improve the quality of these straps, because as I've mentioned in the past, I've broken a couple myself, and definitely would like to see some slightly stronger battery straps on these cars. There are no adjustments for your shocks on the shock towers, and you do have a couple of adjustments on the A-arms, if the camera would focus, so you can see here on the front and as well on the rear. There are a couple of adjustments, so you can move the shocks around a little bit, but not much on the shock tower. You do have adjustments for your camber limbs at the back here to adjust your roll. I think that that's what that adjusts rather. Yeah, I think that's it. You got the plastic steering assembly there, which is pretty standard for a lot of the Timco Rally cars. There is an alloy anchorman there, but it's not, I don't believe that this is a 7075 one. I could be wrong, but I don't believe it is. You do have an adjustable servo saver there as well. The battery compartment or battery tray, you can remove this little lip here for slightly longer batteries if you want. And that pretty much wraps it up. You have a beautiful alloy chassis just there. And of course it's got that etched writing, which actually looks really, really good. Beefy shocks, beefy tires, nice chassis. The car itself doesn't weigh all that much as well. It does feel a little bit lighter than its bigger 6S counterparts. Obviously it's got smaller ESC, smaller motor, a little bit less alloy, more plastic, so it makes sense that it weighs a little bit less. So that's pretty much it for this one. Now the wish list for this one is not going to be very long, mainly because this is a new platform and I'm yet to learn a little bit more about it. But what I have chosen is pretty much the same as what you've heard from my other 6S unboxings. The battery straps, I do want to see an improvement in quality in those, or perhaps even add a 3rd one, which they do have provisions for. The wheel nuts are not serrated. I actually just checked this one and they're still not coming in serrated, so it would be nice to have serrated wheel nuts so they don't come off when you're running. And the last thing is going to be body tape, just to put some protective tape underneath the body. I have heard rumors in the past that maybe Timco Rally might be working on this, but this is one of their latest releases and we still haven't seen it, so I don't know when they're planning to release that or start bringing that out with some of their models. Hopefully we'll see that in future versions of their cars, but I can only keep mentioning it and then hope that Timco Rally listens. Now I was going to pull them up on the antenna tube, because on the 6S cars the antenna tube just slides in and out, it doesn't actually sit in there. But I actually tried it on this car because I noticed that the receiver box is a different design, and I tried it out and it actually fits. So finally the antenna tube that you get with this car fits in the actual receiver box, so feel free to install it if you want. The antenna tube is actually quite long, so I'll cut that and just keep it maybe below the body, the roof line of the car, so it sits a little bit below. That way if you have rollovers and stuff like that, you're not going to be snapping the antenna tube off or damaging the actual antenna itself. So just cut it up nice and short and just maybe pop it up just a little bit above the body and you should be fine. And that's going to wrap it up for yet another unboxing. I do want to give a big shout out to Timco Rally for supplying this car for review. It's always nice to see them supporting the channel, and I'm always more than happy to kind of give a bit of a balanced opinion on these vehicles, especially something like this, which is a pretty fresh platform for them, something that's a little bit new, and I can't wait to run it and just see how this thing holds up. Especially with these tires and the suspension setup being a little bit different from the 6S cars. I'm very curious to see how this performs, as well as testing out this radio. Normally, I kind of swap out the radios pretty much straight away when I run a Timco Rally car, because they all come with the same radio, so there's no point in me running those cars with the same radio. But this one's different, and I'm very curious to see how this is going to go and how it works. So stay tuned for that. I will have running videos coming up very, very shortly. I know I've been doing a lot of unboxings lately, but they are running videos on the way, so stay tuned for that. Feel free to subscribe to the channel if you're new, of course. Hit that like button before you go. Check out the video description for links to my socials and you know, more links to Tymco Rally website where you can find out a little bit more information about this car in case I've glanced over something that I didn't cover in more detail, or you want to know something that perhaps I didn't mention. So that's it from me. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.